Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. I'm Nanki Baveja, and I'll be taking up this session where we will be discussing previous year questions that were there in the economy or that were there from the economy part of the syllabus. We have already taken one session on it, and this is the second session in the line of where we will be discussing the previous year questions from the economy. So in the last session, what did we talk about? We talked about how to approach this subject, which is considered very technical and very difficult for many students. Then we started with money and banking, and some of the questions are still pending from the money and banking session. Let's wait for 5 more minutes for more people to join the session, and then let's continue with the session. So let's just wait for 5 more minutes and let's see who else joins so that they are also not left behind while we are discussing these important topics. Good afternoon, Pratyush. How are you? How is your studies going? Pratyush, am I audible to you? Are you still in the session? Are you watching the video? How are you? Good. That's good that you're going fine. How about economy? How do you find this subject? Do you find it very technical? Do you find it difficult to crack the questions when you go for attempting the questions in the mock test? How do you find the questions? Do you find it easy to solve, or is it sometimes difficult for you to attempt the questions from economy? What is the case with you? Chalo. Let's start with the class. We have already waited for 5 minutes. So in the last class, what did we talk about? Let's take a quick recall of what did we talk in the last class. So we started with talking about how to approach the subject. How to approach the subject. So in the approach, we talked about how the subject could be divided into 2 broad categories. The first one is the factual part and the other one is the conceptual part. In the factual part, what you have to mug up is, let's suppose what is the composition of Monetary Policy Committee? What are the quantitative tools of monetary policy? What are the qualitative tools of monetary policy? What is the composition of Central Board of RBI? All of this is something which comes under factual part. Conceptual part, when we talk about, is more of application of what you have studied here. Conceptual, under conceptual part, what examiner does is it checks your applicability of the basics. Applicability of the basics, when I say, is questions related to cause and effect. So now if there's a question that RBI wants to suck out the liquidity from the economy, where RBI wants to suck out the liquidity from the economy, what or how the quantitative tools of monetary policy will be used. That is what or is checked under the conceptual part. Hi Netra, good noon to you. Praveen, good morning. I think you are late in joining the session. Not an issue with that. We were just taking a recall of what we did in the previous session. We actually talked about how to approach the economy for prelims. Here we are not talking about economy at a whole, but just for the prelims, because right now prelims is on our head and we should know as to how to crack the economy part. And we also talked about how many number of questions are coming every year from the economy. We also talked about that. Now history and polity is something on which you cannot rely. Did we talk about it? Who were there in the previous session? Who amongst you were there in the previous session where I told that polity and history is something we cannot bank upon like we used to do earlier? कि इकोनॉमी नहीं आता है, हेलो इंदु, इकोनॉमी नहीं आता है, so let's get sorted with the polity, geography and history. But if you see the level of questions in history, the level of questions in polity that is being asked from the last 2 years is drastically changed. The level of question has increased. It is no more those simple questions coming up from revolt of 1857 or the freedom struggle. Now the history question or the history paper is becoming more of personality centric, and it is very difficult for the students to comprehend. In fact, if you talk about the polity paper, it is going beyond what Lakshmikant offers you, which means that we cannot bank entirely on these 2-3 subjects. We have to certainly go through economy as well, because the questions, the level of questions, if we chalk out on the graph of easy to difficult, so the economy questions that are asked in last 2-3 years can be rated somewhere between easy to moderate. तो मतलब ये हमारे लिए easy catch है. These are low hanging fruits. छोड़ने ही नहीं है हमें, because the low hanging fruits are the ones on which your base will be built and you will sail across the cutoff limit, right? And how do we sail across the cutoff limit is what we were talking about here, that economy can be broadly divided into factual part and the conceptual. Factual is exactly what you have to mug it up, you have to cram it up, you have to just ratify it, and then applying the knowledge that you have mugged up here is what you will apply here, where the questions are mostly related to or are framed around cause and effect relationship. Yes, Somik, economy and EVS. EVS is what? Environmental science is where you have to focus. These are low hanging fruits for you which you cannot afford to miss. अगर ये भी miss कर दिया, then brace yourself that next year भी paper दे रहे हैं, which you never want the case to be. You want to clear the prelims this year itself, appearing for mains and going for the interview. Leaving economy will be a big blunder, because now the level of questions that is being asked in economy is certainly going towards easy to moderate level. Okay? So this is what we talked about. Then we talked about how to approach the newspaper. Who were there in the previous session? Did all of you watch my previous video also, where I was talking about how to approach the newspaper for economy? Again, newspaper can be divided into something which is factual, but that has to be derived from the current affairs. For example, when the small finance bank was launched, when the small finance banks were introduced in India, there was a question talking about as to what small finance banks are, the features of it. When there was a discount being, or there was an incentive on merchant discount rate that was announced by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So they didn't ask as to what is the discount or the incentive percentage. What the examiner tested you is as to what is merchant discount rate. Last year, the question was as what steps the government will take in order to control the inflation. So inflation is something which is prevalent not just in India, but in the global economies of the world. So now what you need to know is that the concept is picked up from the current. So that means you have to go through as to what is going around in the current scenario. But at the same time, you have to gear up yourself with the basic. Inflation kya hai? What is inflation? How to control the inflation? Tools or steps? ये सारी knowledge कहाँ आएगी? How will you prepare this? It is the basics. It is the factual part of it where all of this will get cleared. Indu, it's okay. You can always watch the recorded videos, and glad that you are here. From now, you can follow up the routine with us so that your all the previous year questions are completed well in time, and you feel confident by the end of this session that yes, now you know economy. Now you know that if any question comes from the economy, how to approach that question, whether that question will be solved from the elimination technique or a smart guess, or whether you have to go back, recall your basics and then attempt the question. Yeah, the last option is whether we should miss this particular question. See, out of all the 100 questions, you have to make a very clear choice as to what questions you have to attempt and what questions you do not have to attempt, because that might lead to you slipping in the negative side or the negative territory or getting the negative marks. So that is not our agenda. There, what you have to do is you have to be very smart in choosing the questions as to in which questions you are very much confident and in which questions you can make a smart guess and sail through the cutoff marks. All of these techniques we'll be talking about when we'll be going through various questions. We have just taken the one session, this is the second session in this line of previous year question paper, and let us start through the questions that were left from money and banking. Abhi tak hum kya baat kar rahe the? Quick recap of what we talked about is how to approach these subjects. So let us now start with the questions that were left from the money and banking. Also, one thing that I told to everyone is that I won't be taking each and every question. Spoon feeding is something which I really don't prefer doing. The important questions, the important themes that you need to know. Also, if someone who has watched my previous session, हमने क्या किया था, उसमें एक list बनाई थी, important list of topics that you have to prepare, and that is something which I didn't prepare. But all of you who were attending the session prepared that list by analyzing as to what type of questions are coming in the question paper. And if somebody from the previous session is here, could that person guide me as to what are those topics that we chalked out in our last session? Is there someone attending this session from the previous class also? Is there anyone? जिसने पिछली क्लास भी अटेंड करी है and is watching the today's session also, that we made an important list of topics after analyzing and solving the previous year questions here on the board itself. Is there anyone? Chalo, if it is not the case, let's wait for them also to join and we'll get back on this important topic list that we made in the previous session. So in the last session, what we were talking about, we were taking the topics from money and banking. Again, a very important topic. At least 3 to 4 questions every year in economy itself comes from the topic money and banking, and this is the last question. This is the last question that we picked up that day from money and banking. So the question, yes, Avinav, I think has joined the session. Good to see you here, Avinav. Yes, the questions were around RBI and its functions, money multiplier. Very good, very prompt response. So yeah, so this was the last question that we discussed that day. Now what we'll do is, okay, so the question talked about intercreditor agreement. I also explained you as to what intercreditor agreement is. Now why all these agreements, why all these steps are taken by the government is the reason, or the agenda behind this is the speedy redressal of the disputes, because lot of loans were turning into NPAs, lot of money was going waste, not much of credit creation was taking place in our country, and that is why 2015 to 2018 was the time where the government along with RBI was taking much of these steps in order to reduce the amount of NPAs, in order to resolve the disputes, and one such agreement is intercreditor agreement. Very good, Avinav. RBI and its functions, money multiplier, governor of RBI are the 3 topics that we listed out that day. Chalo, we'll go back to that list once we are done doing 2-3 questions and update the list. So another step or the initiative taken by the government, RBI, was the Prompt Corrective Action Framework. PCA Framework, that stands for Prompt Corrective Action Framework. Prompt Corrective Action Framework is something devised by whom? It was devised by RBI. It is a mechanism for what? Early intervention. Early intervention by whom? RBI. Depending upon the weak financial metrics, depending on the weak financial metrics of whom? Of the scheduled commercial banks. If those 3 triggers are generated by the scheduled commercial bank, then RBI will intervene and take over the management of those particular banks. And why did the RBI do it? Why did the RBI introduce such a framework? So that it can take over the management, so that the bank does not go into liquidation and the interest and the money of the depositors is kept safe. The interest or the faith of the investors is kept intact, it is maintained intact in the banking system of the country. अगर रोज ही ऐसा होने लग गया that banks are going into liquidation, NBFCs are not returning their money, what will happen is people will stop depositing their money with the banks. People will start losing their faith. People will start losing their trust into the banking system of the country, and that is where RBI has to step in. RBI steps in by prompt corrective action, where depending on the weak financial metrics of whom? Of the banks, of these scheduled commercial banks, where RBI takes over the management. Now, scheduled commercial banks की weak financial metrics has been taken care of. What about the cooperative banks? What about the cooperative banks? उनका क्या करें? उनको liquidate होने दें? What is the mechanism for cooperative banks? Is it not necessary to protect the interest of the investors or the depositors whose money is there parked with the cooperative banks? Is it not necessary? Is it not important for RBI to protect the interest of the depositors whose money is parked with the cooperative banks? What is the answer? Netra, Praveen, Indu, Somik, what is your opinion on that? वहां पे नहीं प्रोटेक्ट करना क्या इंटरेस्ट? प्रत्युष, वहां पे भी तो जरूरी है ना. Depositor is depositor no matter where the depositor is putting the money, whether they are parking the money with the scheduled commercial banks or whether they are parking their money with the urban cooperative banks or with the NBFCs. But abhi to what we studied is prompt corrective action is just applicable on the scheduled commercial banks. Then what about the cooperative banks? What about them? What about the money deposited with the cooperative banks? उनको मरने दें, जाने दें, कोई बात नहीं, डूबो, कोई बात नहीं, because RBI is concerned with the scheduled commercial banks only. What is the framework for cooperative banks? Why is not anyone replying on the group? Why is everyone so silent on the chats? Are you not aware of this? The two months down the line, you have prelims on your head, and see the response that you're giving. You should be very prompt right now in providing the responses. It is you people who should be guiding the session and not I who should lead the session. क्या हो गया? Why is not anyone replying? Chalo, anyway. So for the cooperative banks, the framework is SAF, Supervisory Action Framework. And now what we have to check is that prompt corrective actions, which was earlier applicable or devised for scheduled commercial banks, is now applicable on NBFCs also. So ye to ho gaya current. This is current affairs. Now what you have to go back and check is as to what this prompt corrective action framework is, what is supervisory action framework, what are the metrics defined under prompt corrective action framework. Now that you know that NBFCs are also covered under prompt corrective action framework. Another thing that you have to note is that this framework is also applicable on foreign banks. The foreign banks who have their subsidiaries or branches in our country, that is India, if the financial metrics are triggered, if on the account of weak financial metrics which are there in the foreign banks also, RBI will invoke prompt corrective action and will jump into the taking over the management and control of the bank until unless everything goes fine. But this is also very important that this PCA is not applicable on small finance banks and payment banks. I don't know why I'm not able to see the chats. You have to excuse me for a minute so that I can check with the technical team as to what is going wrong with the chats. Because I suppose that you would be replying somewhere, and but because of some technical glitch, I'm not able to see your chats. Allow me a moment, and I'll be back. Is it unmuted? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Am I audible? How do I know? Yeah. Okay. Am I audible? Can anyone give me a heads up? Can anyone give me a heads up that am I audible to everyone? Okay, Abhinav, thank you so much. So we are done with what PCA framework and supervisory action framework is. Now let us start with the questions again. The question is, the chairman of the public sector banks are selected by whom? Whom of this body appoints, or sorry, selects the chairman of the public sector banks? Can anyone tell me that? And what if the question would have been the chairman of the public sector bank? Let's change this question. Let's change this question. The chairman of the public sector bank is appointed, because you need to know that the selection is done by some other body, whereas the appointment of the chairman of the public sector bank is done by some other body. Yes, living legend. The answer is Bank Board Bureau. What about the appointment? So the selection or the recommendation, you can say. The recommendation for the selection of the senior positions in the public sector banks is done by the, or recommendations are provided by the Bank Board Bureau, whereas the appointment letter, the appointment is done not by RBI, Nandita. No, Google it and check it. Who appoints or who does the appointment of the chairman or in the public sector bank? No, it is not the RBI. Nahi. Concepts kharab hain, galat hain. You need to mend it up right now. It is just like that the recommendation for you getting selected as an IS officer is done by UPSC, whereas the appointment is done by whom? DOPT. No, Avinav. RBI doesn't provide the appointment for the chairman of RBI, of the public sector banks. No, 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 no. Google it quickly. Who appoints? Who provides the appointment letter? And that is, see, that is why the previous year questions are very important, because that helps you check where do you stand in terms of knowledge, where do you stand in terms of your concepts. No, which government? हमें पता है government, but there are so many ministries under government. Which ministry of the government appoints or provides the appointment letter of the chairman of public sector bank? कौन होता है? कौन सी ministry? Which government, living legend? Which government? Which? There are so many. Ministry of Corporate Affairs is doing that. Ministry of Home Affairs is doing that. Which ministry? Ministry of Finance provides the appointment letter. And which department under Ministry of Finance? Avinav, check that too. Jaldi check karo. Google it right now. Netra, why are you so silent? Try to be more active in the class. Google it and find it out as to which department under Ministry of Finance provides the appointment letter for the chairman of public sector bank. Recommendation to दे दिया Bank Board Bureau ने, but appointment letter कौन issue करता है? Which ministry, sorry, which department under Ministry of Finance is doing that? Quickly Google it and tell me. Romil? No, the answer is not D. Google it. Ministry of Finance, but under Ministry of Finance, which department? Which department under Ministry of Finance? If you're taking more than a minute, then you are certainly doing it as an assignment. Yes, Nandita, Department of Financial Services is the one which provides the appointment to the chairman of public sector bank. Whereas the recommendation, there is difference. See, recommendation that this person is fit for or fit to act as the Chairman of the public sector bank is provided by the Bank Board Bureau, but the appointment letter is issued by the Ministry of Finance and Department of Financial Services, which is DOFS. तो confuse नहीं होना है, appointment कौन कर रहा है and selection कौन कर रहा है. Clear with this? Next in line, we have a question like the service area approach. The service area approach was implemented under the purview of which of the following? So, see students, such questions, until unless you're very sure of such questions, don't go for a guess. Don't take the risk of doing the hit and trial method. Don't do that, because such close options, because here you could always go for MG Narega, you could go for lead bank scheme, or you could go for integrated rural development program, where you can just make a smart guess ki bhai service area approach means development of a particular area or a particular service in a particular area, right? So until unless very sure, such questions are meant to be skipped. I would not, that is my personal recommendation. You can always have your own different opinion. You can always have an opinion which is different from me. But if I would have been in this particular situation, until unless I'm very sure, I would have skipped this question, because this could lead me getting or earning a negative figure or a negative number. So let's talk about as to what service area approach is. This service area approach, the correct answer is option B. So under this, an area was allotted to the bank in order to develop banking and credit services in that particular area. So that was promoted under the lead bank scheme, and this comes under or falls under this category. So the answer is lead bank scheme. No living legend. The answer is not rural development, but it was certainly for the rural development, but the answer is not IRDP. The answer is lead bank scheme, where an area was assigned to a bank to provide or extend banking plus credit facilities to that particular unbanked area. Moving on to the next question, which one of the following describes the term merchant discount rate? Now, why this question came in 2018 is because, again, if you see, because you were not there studying or preparing for UPSC exam in 2018, and that is where we mentors are here to tell you as to why this question was framed. So in 2018, what happened is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology actually announced that the merchant discount rate, the amount that is being levied on using your debit cards would be borne by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and that is where the question was picked up from, a topic being picked up from the current affairs, but check kya kiya uska basics as to what MDR means, what purpose does it provide for. So what is MDR? MDR is the charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting payments from the customers, banks, debit card. Avinav, हमने ये पढ़ा भी था क्लास में. I don't know where were you. The answer is not fourth. I have discussed this question in my class where we were doing the crash course, and still after that you are going wrong. नहीं, ये नहीं होना चाहिए. Again, you should go into the introspection mode, that you really need to go back and revise the concepts. तो क्या trigger generate हुआ? That revision is what you need. It is okay to go wrong here, but you should not go wrong where? In the exam. So merchant discount rate होता क्या है? So let's suppose when you go for shopping, sometimes when you run out of cash, what you resort to is not the Paytms, but sometimes to debit card also. Paytm, Google Pay, and Bheen se pehle kya tha? There was debit cards and the credit cards that you used to use, and there's the machine that is being installed in every showroom where you swipe your debit card, right? So there's a merchant who is acting in between. There's an intermediary who is acting between whom your bank, from which the payment would be debited, and a bank where the payment will go and will be transferred to your bank's account, right? So an intermediary who is acting in between, who is accepting the payment from your bank and transferring it to the seller's account, that intermediary, the person or the firm that is providing the service of accepting the debit cards, are the merchants, and that fees that they charge, for accepting the payments from your debit card is the merchant discount rates. For example, if you would have seen these pictures, when you execute a payment on the on some online platforms, like there is Razorpay, there is Avenues, there is Citrus, all of these are providing these merchant services of accepting the payment from the third party and transferring it to the account from which the sale has been made. So merchant discount rate is what? It is the charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting the payment from his customer through bank's cards. Are we clear with this concept? So there are three parties, that is, A is you, there is an intermediary, and B is the showroom wala who has made the sale to you. So the merchant would will accept the payment, will keep a fee or charge a fee and transfer the rest of the amount to the seller. Clear hua ye cheez? Are we clear with this? Are we good to go? Can we move on to the next question? Can we move on to the next question? Is there any doubt? By doing all these previous year questions, क्या पता चल रहा है how the questions are picked up from the current. अब कुछ typical नहीं पूछा है इसके बारे में. The examiner just picked as to what is the new announcement with respect to the payment services, what is the new announcement with respect to financial inclusion that can be done, or what are the steps. Why this incentive was provided to the merchants was so as to encourage people to use more and more of the debit card, so that they could be financially included, so that their transactions could be accounted for. Okay, that is what you have to do. Whatever is going in current, you have to go back, check your basics, check the factual part of it, and you are through with the paper. Chalo. Next is what we have is, with reference to the governance of the public sector banking in India, consider the following statements. Again, a blend of both factual and from the current affairs. Factual and conceptual. This is current affairs and this is factual. A blend of both. So the question says that capital infusion into public sector banks by the government of India has steadily increased in the last decade. For that, what do you have to resort to? You have to read what economic survey provides us. What are the trends and the graphs which are there in the economic survey? So ye to seedha wahan se aaya. And why 2018? Because what was happening? Indradhanush. Ye Indradhanush टीकाकरण वाला नहीं है, where the immunization was provided. Indradhanush is where the infusion of fresh capital was done for the public sector banks. Recapitalization was done during the period of 2016 to 18. This was the time when NPAs of the public sector banks were at its all-time high, and the government plus the RBI were taking steps to revive the public sector banks because of the huge amount of NPAs in their balance sheet. And that is why, because the capital infusion was done, that is why a question on the trend, whether the capital infusion by the government under public sector banks has been steadily increased. Now, if they would have asked increased, yes, certainly it has increased. But whether is it steadily increasing, we are not very sure of that. We are not sure whether it has steadily increased. Now, what is the difference between, madam, steadily increase and increasing? This question should have come from your side. This should not have been initiated from my end. In fact, some of you, or at least one person, should have asked, ma'am, what is the difference between steadily increasing as well as increasing? भाई increase तो हो ही रही है ना, What is the difference? How does it make a difference? So the difference between steadily increasing and increasing is, so if I say the capital infusion goes like in, let's suppose 15, 16, 17, 18 and 19. अब बताओ, which out of these two situations, I'll get aside the board so that you can read clearly, which amongst these two of this situation is steadily increasing and which one of it is increasing? बताइए. Which amongst the two is steadily increasing and which amongst the following is just increasing? Yes. See, one of the student has told here that they fall under the trap of the question because of UPSC playing around such words. Steadily, constantly. ये वर्ड तो हम पढ़ते ही नहीं है. This adjective which UPSC has the tendency to use alongside the word of increasing or decreasing, ये तो हम इग्नोर कर देते हैं कि भाई ब्यूटिफिकेशन ऑफ उसके लिए स्टेटमेंट के लिए यूज किया होगा. So Indu, as per you, which one amongst the two is the case of steadily increasing? B is increasing, A is steadily increasing. Netra, B is what? It is steadily increasing. Acha, and A is increasing. No, dear, no. B is what is steadily increasing. Steadily increasing is this, whereas in case of A, it is just increasing. Why it is just increasing? Because you could see that here in 2017 there it has dipped from 30 lakh. The capital infusion has dipped from 30 lakh to 25 and then again to 37. Whereas if you see in the case of B situation, 20 to 30 to 40, 45, 47, there has been no fall in between. So though here it is increasing but not constantly, continuously, steadily. That is just the case of increasing, but where if you see the situation B here, it is steadily, continuously, consistently. क्या है? Consistency maintain करी गई है. There has been consistent pattern that has been maintained. That is, it is increasing year after year. But in case of A, it is not increasing. There is a situation where it is 25 lakh. There is no consistent pattern that has been formed. So A is the situation. फिर से बता रही हूँ, confuse मत हो जाना exam में. A is what? It is increasing. B is what? It is steadily increasing. Are we clear with this? Are we clear with this now? अब clear हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है? Is there any doubt still which is there in your mind? Feel free to ask. Feel free to ask here itself, because it's better to clear it right now rather than suffering it in the paper. Rather than missing a question because of this question over there is more painful rather than to ask it here and getting it cleared itself. I think most of you are very clear as to what increasing it is and what is steadily increasing all about. Now moving on to the next. Okay, so let's go back to the question. Capital infusion into the public sector banks by the government of India has steadily increasing. We are not sure of. This was there clearly in the current affairs of that time in 2018, where the mergers of 6 associates of SBI was done with the parent State Bank of India. So this statement is right, whereas this statement where the word steadily is used is not right, because though the capital infusion has increased, but it has not steadily increased over the last decade. देखो तो सही टाइम स्पैन कितना पूछ दिया है. if it would have been for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, तब भी हम एक guess ले सकते थे. We could have taken a risk and mentioned it as correct, but they are asking for a trend of last 10 years. The decade is what is 10 years, and we are not sure of what is the trend of the capital infusion in public sector banks in the last 10 years. We are not sure last 10 years में क्या रहा हो सकता है. There could have been a dip into the infusion of capital into public sector banks, so we cannot take a risk, and certainly ये वाला option is wrong. Only this stand right. So what is the learning out of this question is the difference between the steadily and what is the difference between increasing, as well as how the questions are picked up from the current affair and the basics are checked, and how there's a blend of questions between the factual and the current affairs. Okay? Next in line we have, with reference to the digital payment, consider the following statement. ये वाला statement ने बहुत बच्चों को घुमाया था. बच्चे सोच रहे थे जब हम पेमेंट करते हैं कितना फैक्टर, कितने स्टेप्स पे ऑथेंटिकेशन इज आस्क्ड by this particular mechanism, that how many steps of authentication is there in the debit card and how many steps of authentication is there under Bhim app. ये उस टाइम का करंट अफेयर्स था because Bhim was launched. So again, your mind should be in a very alert position that whatever is prevailing in the current situation, you have to go back and check its basics. You have to set its basics right. ठीक है, चीजें समझ आ रही हैं? That is how you have to approach the paper. अब इसी से related, इसी से UPI से related is what is the current affairs. Can anyone tell me that? Can anyone tell me that? What is the current affairs? What is the news that is there around UPI these days? What is the new development with respect to UPI? I'm not gonna move ahead. You Google it, you scratch your brains, you provide me the answers, and then only I'll move ahead. What is the new development with respect to UPI that you should know, that should be on your tips? बताओ जल्दी से. क्या न्यू डेवलपमेंट हुआ है? All of you are so unaware. I am so surprised. Avinav, what UPI 123? What is UPI 123? बताओ. What is UPI 123? What are you actually providing me? What UPI 123? What does that mean? Is this a new development? So okay, so just imagine that I here in the class teaching you that there is a new development that has taken place around UPI, that is UPI 123. You will itself, you people only would say, ma'am, what is this UPI 123? We are not gonna study from you. We will shut off the lesson and we'll move on to the other teacher who will tell us as to what UPI 123 is. Is this sufficient, Avinav and Bhavani? कि मैं सिर्फ इतना सा बोलूं that UPI 123 is something which is a new development with respect to UPI? Yes, now you have got it right. No smartphones are needed to make a transaction through UPI, and that is what you have to gear up yourself with. That earlier smartphones चाहिए होते थे. Earlier we needed smartphones plus internet. For what? For making a transaction over UPI, right? We needed an internet pack plus a smartphone. But now that's an update. Very good, Nandita. March 8th was the day where it was announced that smartphones are no longer needed to conduct a transaction with the help of UPI. Now, what you have to go back and see is what UPI is, how it functions, who developed this mechanism. Yes, What you need is just a phone plus active SIM that is connected to your bank account. The number which is there has to be connected to your bank account, and you can easily conduct a transaction with the help of UPI. What you cannot do is you cannot scan and pay. Scan and pay के लिए क्या चाहिए? Camera चाहिए. We need a smartphone who can process that scanner and execute the payment. So that cannot be executed with the help of non-smartphones. For that, still you need what? Smartphone. So scan and pay facility is not available with respect to the non-smartphones, and the new development is that what? That no more smartphones are needed. So matlab this is a probable area jahan question can be framed. Question can be framed around what UPI is, who are the founding figures, or who backs UPI mechanism. How many factor of authentication is required while you are doing the transaction, right? तो आंखें खुली रखो अपनी. कितनी, I'm so surprised that you took so much time to reply. Some of you would have probably Googled also. I'm very sure about that. You would have Googled. You are not up to date as to what are the current developments around you. This is such a breakthrough news which would lead to financial inclusion in our country. You have to know as to what are the steps that is taken by the government which could have mass implications, which could have far-fetched implications on the financial inclusion of our country. ठीक है, तो ये चीजें अब ध्यान रखनी है. This is what is redundant. ये सब हमें पता है. What you need to brace yourself is what UPI is all about. Foundation plus the steps in transaction. ये चीजें अब आपकी assignment है. ठीक है. Moving on to the next question, talks about the capital adequacy ratio. Now, capital adequacy ratio is prescribed under which norm? So there is a norm which talks about the capital adequacy ratio. Batao. Quick revision. Okay, Avinav, now I got that. I'll keep that in mind, that there's a lag between what I am seeing here and what you are providing. I'll take maybe 30 seconds, wait for you to respond and then move ahead. Okay. ठीक है. Good that you told me. I will certainly keep this in mind right now. Chalo, batao ab. There's a norm which talks about capital adequacy ratio. What is that particular norm? Bataiye. Google kijiye, head scratch kijiye, do anything, but you are the only one who will be telling me as to what is that norm which talks about the capital adequacy ratio. Very good. Basel III norms are the one which talks about the capital adequacy ratio. Now, what is capital adequacy ratio? It is the ratio of the capital of the bank which is exposed to which assets, which kind of assets? Risk-weighted assets. It is one type of capital which the banks have to keep aside because that capital is particularly limited to, particularly used to, or particularly exposed to the risk-weighted asset. So, capital adequacy ratio, what is the purpose of it? It ensures that the banks have to maintain the capital in the form of their own funds to offset any loss that the bank incurs if the account holders fails to repay the dues. Matlab NPA getting converted into what? Loss asset. Another important trend that you have to note is you have to go back and see the economic survey. Time nahi hai to summary jaake dekhiye as to what is the trend of NPAs in the government sector, that is the public sector banks, the private sector banks in one last year. You have to check it because with the COVID, the situation has changed. Earlier only, there was so high NPAs in the public sector banks. What impact did the COVID have on the levels of NPA of the public sector banks is something which you have to find it out. ठीक है? कहाँ मिलेगी इसका authentic information is the economic survey. And for your ease, ये लो, chapter 2 में, chapter 2 of economic survey has a graph which provides for the level of NPAs, the gross NPAs of the public sector banks as well as the private sector banks. इस चीज को भी prepare करना है because the questions are there framed around the trends around important economic parameters, important financial metrics of the economy, and this is one such important parameter that you need to know. GNPAs of whom? Of the public sector banks. What has been trend, whether it is increasing. If it is increasing, it is steadily increasing. If it is declining, has there been a constant trend? Then about the private sector bank as well, who has more of NPAs is something अब आप prepare करेंगे because everything is not what I'm gonna spoon feed you here. What is Nandita telling? She's saying 9% present is the capital adequacy ratio. Fair enough, but there is the capital adequacy ratio prescribed by RBI is different from which the government prescribes. So what is the difference? What is the capital adequacy ratio provided by the RBI to the banks, so to maintain them, and what is the capital adequacy ratio prescribed by the government for the banks to maintain? Which of the following two of the institutions, that is the government and RBI, prescribes higher form or a higher digit of capital adequacy ratio to be maintained by banks? ये भी आपको पता करना है. ये छोटी छोटी बातें, all these small nuances is something which you need to be very clear about when you approach prelims. That is where you will feel confident. Now you put forward any question and we will solve the question without any doubt. We will not hold any second doubt about the question, the answer that we have attempted, and that will only happen when you prepare yourself, you acquaint yourself with all these facts and figures. हमें पता है what is the limit or what is the digit provided by the RBI with respect to capital adequacy ratio, with respect to what the government prescribes for it. And very good, good friend, I don't know what your actual name is, but yes, the gross NPAs are reducing after 2018. Very good that you know this fact. Very good, accolades for you. And the next statement is capital adequacy ratio is decided by each individual bank. Is this possible that that a leeway could be provided to each and every bank in order to decide their own capital adequacy ratio? Do you think a constant or a uniformity will be maintained? Because this is so subjective. Every bank will have its own opinion ki bhai this should be my percentage which I would maintain. No bank would want to block its capital under the capital adequacy ratio. Every bank would want to maximize the process of credit creation. Every bank would want to maximize the loan that it provides for, right? So that they can earn more and more on it. So, ये statement thoda sa bhi, if you provide your knowledge or your smart guess, this is a wrong statement. That the bank could not be provided with this leeway that they are decided or they are provided the freehold of deciding their own cars. So this is wrong. Only first statement is right, and along with that you have certain assignments to do as to talking about and supplementing your notes with as to what are the levels of NPA, and that is provided in the chapter 2 economics survey of this year. Now moving on to the next question, very important one. Again, क्या पता चल रहा है question read करने से? First read the question and then we'll go back and talk about as to what this question is highlighting, which another important theme this question provides us to prepare for. देखो इस चीज को, पढ़ो. Let's go through the question. The Reserve Bank of India manages and services Government of India securities, but not any state government securities. The Reserve Bank of India manages and services Government of India security, that is the union government, but not the state one. Okay? Next is the treasury bills are issued by the Government of India and there are no treasury bills issued by the state governments. Last is treasury bills are issued at a discount from the par value, that is also called the face value. तो चलो उस स्टेटमेंट से स्टार्ट करते हैं on which you are very sure of, and I think third is the statement on which most of you would be very sure, that treasury bills, which are also called as T bills, ठीक है, T bills are issued at a discount to face value, ठीक है. So third statement is something which we are very sure of. So the answer would be somewhere here, here, or here. This is ruled out for us, right? Now let's move on to maybe second statement. Treasury bills are issued by the government of India and there are no treasury bills issued by the state government. This is also right, that right now currently only the union government is what is allowed to issue the treasury bills, but that is not the case. If we go back in times, there was a time where the state governments were also allowed to issue the treasury bills, but as of now, in the current situation, it is just the union government who is allowed to issue the treasury bills, making the second statement also wrong. So matlab this is also eliminated. Now what we are left with, these two statements. ये तो बहुत easy है. Reserve Bank of India manages and services securities or the debt of both the government, just not the union government. And so making first statement wrong, this is the wrong and this is the right option. So now the next question, the next topic that you should prepare for is that if the state governments are not allowed to issue the treasury bills, what are the ways in which, or what are the instruments through which state government can raise the loans? कौन बताएगा मुझे ये? What are the instruments available with the state government to raise the money from the public? भाई सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के पास तो बहुत सारे हैं. What is the mechanism available with the state government to raise the loans? बताओ. What is the instrument through which the state government can raise loan for itself? Jaldi batao, we cannot spend so much time on each and every question because we have a long way to go. We have to start with the public finance and the financial management. So we have to quickly finish up this section, which is money and banking. Jaldi se. What is the financial instrument through which the state can, or the state government can raise money from the public? So the answer is, I think most of you are unaware. I've waited enough for your chats. No, it's not the open market. Certainly that is floated in the open market. But I was talking about, good friend, I don't know your real name. I think all of you, that is what I would say. Please, no Dharmendra, T-bill, abhi to humne question kiya. State governments are not allowed to issue T-bills. It is the union government that can issue the T-bills, right? So what I was asking, or what I was telling is that please, it's my humble request to all of you that please post your real name over here, because it's easier for us to relate to you. Let's suppose with the names only, I know that who my old students are. Netra is there, Avinav is there. All of these are my old students who have attended my previous batches also. But I cannot relate to as to who this good friend is, right? So there was a name in my last session by the name of Moon Lover. I certainly can't relate to. Please provide your real names so that it is easier for me to relate. If it happens that you post a doubt on my Instagram page or you post a query, I know that ki bhai ye mere students hai and I have to reply to them. There are a lot many times that people keep on posting or sending messages to me on my Instagram handle, but since I don't know them by their real name, I refrain myself from replying to them. ठीक है? So that has been done. Yes, the answer is the state development loan is the instrument through which the state government can raise money from the public. ठीक है ना? Rest all, now the treasury bills which are now discontinued, that this has been ruled out. Treasury bills are currently issued only by the union government under 3 formats: 91, 182 and 364 days. The another instrument available with just the union government is the cash management bill. Cash management bill was introduced in 2010 and it is just available for 91 days. Maximum to maximum is the 91 days. And the last is the dated securities. The dated security, okay, the tenure for state development loan is 5 to 10 years. Now last is the dated securities. This is also just available for the union government and not available for the state governments. And the tenure for the dated securities is maximum 40 years. So what you have to prepare now is the instruments available with the government, both union government plus the state governments, to raise funds. तो ये हमारा एक और important topic हो गया. एक list बना रहे थे. We were making a list where we were jotting down the important themes and topics which we have to prepare for the current prelims, and this is another such topic that has to go into that list, which Avinav helped me in updating today, that instruments for raising funds by available for or disposal, which are at the disposal of union and the state government. Clear with that? Now let us move on to the next question, which talks about which of the following statement correctly describes the meaning of the legal tender. So there are two terms. One is the fiat money. And the another one is legal tender. Now, can anyone tell me as to what fiat money is and what is the difference between the legal tender? What is fiat money and what is legal tender? Can anyone tell me that? My old students whom I remember by their name, which is Netra is there, Avinav is there, and let me scroll, who else is there? Can anyone tell me that? What is fiat money all about? What is legal tender? Batao. Nandita, what about government securities? Can you please elaborate on your question as to what doubt you are asking, beta? Batao. What is the question that you are asking? Fiat money has no intrinsic value. Very good, Avinav. Good to know that you are revising the concepts. Good to know that you remember things. Good to know that you are improving in economy. Very good. Legal tender is something which is backed by some government or say sovereign authority. So fiat money is what? Which do not have any intrinsic value. Let's suppose a paper is there and it shows rupees 2000 note. How does it derive its value? Not because of the material by which it is made up of. It derives its value because it has a backing by the sovereign authority, which is the central bank and the government, which promises that if someone approaches with this piece of paper, they will provide them a purchasing power of equivalent to rupees 2000. Whosoever holds this note which says rupees 2000 written on that, and it has a promise to pay rupees 2000, a sum of 2000. So if anyone approaches with this note to central bank or any commercial bank or any other banking system of the country, they promise that they will provide them with the purchasing power which is equivalent to rupees 2000 of their domestic currency, and that is what is legal tender. It has a backing from some sovereign authority. What are other? Yes, Satish, very good, that legal tenders are backed by central bank. What are others up to? Very good, Indu, very good, Netra, that you're very clear with the concepts. What is Somik up to? Soumik, what is very complex? Macroeconomy, you're talking about the books, no? That is 12th standard book, where there is one book is related to microeconomics and the other one is related to macroeconomy. Microeconomics, I will again tell that you do not have to go through each and every topic. There are 3 max to max 4-5 topics which you have to study, which I'll tell you as to what are those topics. Coming to the macroeconomy, certainly it is technical. I would not say it is difficult. Thoda sa technical hai, but as soon as you're sorted with these basic concepts, no, it will be very easier for you to understand. So just read it one by one as to what macroeconomics is, what is the function of RBI, what are the qualitative tools, what are the quantitative tools, and simultaneously keep on doing these previous year questions with us, and your economy will be sorted. Also, for those people who really find economy difficult, I keep on posting certain tips and techniques on my Instagram handle also as to how to overcome the stress, talking sometimes about how to go about the newspaper, talking as to how do you approach the economy. So there also you can keep yourself updated. You can also enter into conversation with me. I'm always open for conversation with the students who are finding economy little difficult. Always and always open and welcome. You text me over there and I will certainly reply you. Okay? Now, what is the right answer? The money which a creditor is under the compulsion to accept his claims. Next, my question. Okay. Is the audio problem with everyone? Is the audio problem with everyone? It's audible? Okay, fine. Also, another question and another clarity of concept that you need is, hello Aditi, hello. You are so much late in joining the session. I don't know why. Kunal, I don't know when did you join the session. Anyway, it's fine. Okay, so where I was saying there's a concept of legal tender, but also there's a concept of limited legal tender. There's a concept of limited legal tender and there's a concept of unlimited legal tender. So in the limited legal tender, it means that 50 paisa coins cannot be the unlimited legal tender. If it means that if you use 50 paisa coins to settle a payment of rupees 2000, you would the person who has to accept the payment can deny accepting that, because it is very difficult for the person to keep calculating the 50 or to keep counting the 50 paisa coins in order to sum it up till rupees 2000. So there's a limitation that is being imposed by RBI. They have actually bifurcated the legal tender into 2 parts, which is limited legal tender and unlimited legal tender, which says that 50 paisa coins can be used to settle a payment till 10 rupees, right? Whereas coins of 1 coin, which is of 1 rupees, can be used for a maximum of rupees 1000. Coins are limited legal tender. You do not have to remember these limits, but what you have to remember is that, very good Abhinav, I am so happy that you are keeping up with the pace, that coins are limited legal tenders, whereas the currency notes are the unlimited legal tenders in India. Now let's move on to the next question, which talks about NPCI. NPCI helps in promoting financial inclusion in the economy, and NPCI has launched RuPay, a card payment system. Again, a question directly picked up from the current affairs. Now what you have to do is you have to go back and check whether the NPCI is the autonomous body. भाई ये बहुत जरूरी होता है. whether it is autonomous body, whether it is a statutory body. Who can tell me whether it is a statutory body or an autonomous body? Who will tell me that? Jaldi se. Not much time is left with us. We have to start with the public policy and fiscal management. Who could tell me whether NPCI is an autonomous body or a statutory body? What was the act? What was the name of the act under which NPCI was introduced? Who will tell me that? I am not waiting for you to tell me the right answer, but please answer my question first, that which act was it under which NPCI was introduced or was launched? Jaldi se. No, Ayush, it's the Payments and Settlement Act 2007, under which NPCI was introduced. It takes care of all the retail payments in our country. Retail payments formed by RBI plus Indian Bank Association. So this is the facts that you need to know about NPCI. Now let's move on to the next question, which talks about a very important mechanism that you need to know, which is SWIFT. Why was it in news? It's a messaging system. It's a messaging system that is used by banks around the world. अब ये क्यों पढ़ना है आपके दिमाग में आ रहा होगा, मैम, why do we need to know about this system? Is because this was recently in current affairs, because European Union blocked or barred Russia from using SWIFT system. Now what is SWIFT all about? SWIFT is a messaging system. ठीक है ना? It is not a mechanism to settle the payments, but it is a mechanism through which banks send messages to each other. Each other here, the parties are banks to banks. So the banks around the world uses this messaging systems in order to settle the money amongst itself. Yes, Ayush, very good. It was Russia was barred from using the SWIFT system in lieu of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Why was it done? It was done in order to create a pressure, in order to topple the economy of Russia so that it stops fighting from Ukraine and the peace prevails all over. It is controlled by the central bank of 10 countries. It was established not as some international institution, but as a society which is registered in Belgium. Before that, before SWIFT was there, its predecessor, matlab isse pehle what was used, it was the telex that was used, but because telex was not available across most of the countries, that is why SWIFT came into the picture. And SWIFT was why it was so readily accepted, because the facility was accepted and was available across most of the countries in the world. So telex was its predecessor. What does SWIFT uses is it uses 8 characters. Yaad rakhna, question could be around, it is an alphanumeric code. No, it is not an alphanumeric code. It is 8 characters. Matlab sirf alphabets hain. There is no numbers that is being used in the SWIFT. Next is, what are the, so these are the two systems, the messaging systems, which is developed by China and Russia, who consider themselves superpowers, which also are superpowers in itself. They have their own system developed in case if a situation arises that if some country blocks them from using SWIFT, so their economy does not topple, and they have a system in their place, which is cross-border interbank payment system is for China, and SPFS is for Russia. This is just additional in case, this is just additional information in case अगर कोई question आ जाता है, out of which one statement talking about SWIFT is that Russia has its own system by the name of this, so you should be really aware of as to what is the system developed by Russia, which is equivalent to the SWIFT mechanism. So now all of a sudden rupee dollar swap, what are we talking about? Don't deviate from the topic right now. We can take this doubt later, but not right now. Whenever we'll talk about that, we'll talk about the external sector, we'll take that in maybe tomorrow's class. There I'll talk about what is dollar rupee swap. What is Mr. Junior talking about? Yes, Junior, Mr. Junior, that yes, SWIFT has connection of over more than 11,000 international banks, and that is that it has a massive connection of network of different banks from different countries, and that is why it's so widely accepted. Niranjan, right now, no, but Russia and China has developed their own way of communication in case if this goes or if this process halts, then they have their backup, which is this SPFS and the cross-border interbank payment. Okay, next what we have is talking about the Monetary Policy Committee and with which Monetary Policy Committee is related to. It is related to RBI, Reserve Bank of India, which makes this important again and again important, that RBI is something which we have to cover holistically from all its dimensions, be how it was formed, when was it nationalized, when the shares were taken over by the government, who was its first governor, how the governors are appointed, how many governors are there in RBI, what is the Monetary Policy Committee, what is the central board of RBI, what is its composition, whether their members are eligible for appointment, reappointment, whether the governor is eligible for reappointment, again is very important, because right now Shaktikanta Das has been reappointed for a 3 years term. Then what are the tools used by RBI, all of it. So RBI is something which you have to cover from all the maximum dimensions that you could do. Very, very, very important topic which is there asked every single year. Now quickly, Monetary Policy Committee, बहुत ही easy question, factual, nothing conceptual or applied or cause and effect that is being asked. It decides RBI benchmark interest rate. Yes, हमें पता है कैसे जो bi-monthly monetary policy meeting होती है उसमें it is a 12-member body. No, it is not 12-member body, bhai. It is 6-member body. 3 people coming from RBI, 3 people from government. Who heads it? The governor of RBI heads the Monetary Policy Committee. It functions under the chairmanship of Union Finance Ministry. Kaise? This is not possible, because if it is formed under RBI, it will not come under the chairmanship of Union Finance Ministry. This is wrong. This is wrong. Making the answer A or option A as correct. तो क्या चीजें पता होनी चाहिए? The composition of the Monetary Policy Committee. Is there any mandate on them to meet for a particular time of years or so and so time? Let's suppose what is the mandate provided to them? What is the limit set for the Monetary Policy Committee to meet in an year, whether they could meet for 2 times or as many times, or is there any some minimum or maximum limit set for them? ये इस तरीके से आपको किसी टॉपिक को अप्रोच करना है. Next we have is, with reference to Indian economy, consider the following. So which of the following is the part of monetary policy? देखा फिर से क्या? RBI. भाई RBI is something छोड़ ही नहीं सकते. Those who find economy difficult, please macro economy say there's a chapter in 12th standard NCERT talking about the various or covering the RBI from various dimensions. Please उसको तो पढ़ जाना, ताकि 1-2 नंबर which are low hanging fruits at least वो तो आप कर पा रहे हो. नेत्रा आंसर गलत है, फिर से करो इसको. आंसर गलत है नेत्रा. So there are 2 policies in a country. One is fiscal policy and the another is monetary policy. ठीक है, fiscal policy is taken care of by the government, monetary policy is taken care of by the central bank, right? So these two, public debt, public का debt and public का revenue कहाँ जाएगा? गवर्नमेंट के पास जाएगा. बैंक रेट, ओपन मार्केट ऑपरेशंस किसके हैं? आरबीआई के. आरबीआई के हैं तो दे विल गेट फॉर्म और दे विल कम अंडर दी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कमेटी. नेत्रा, आई डोंट नो क्यों कंफ्यूजन हुई. नहीं, yes, okay, I'm so sorry. So the correct answer is just 1 and 2, because these two comes under the fiscal policy, which is taken care of by whom? It is taken care of by the government of India. Clear? Chalo, next question. Convertibility of rupee. Convertibility of rupee. Convertibility into what? Convertibility, when we talk about of rupee into foreign currency. Convertibility of our domestic currency into foreign currency. So what does convertibility of rupee implies? Tell me the answer. What would be the answer for this? A very simple question. कुछ इसमें difficult नहीं है. Very, we can say a low hanging fruit. You should not go wrong on this question as to what does convertibility of rupee means. It means freely permitting conversion of rupee to other currency and vice versa. Now my next question is whether the free currency convertibility is allowed or permitted in India. Whether rupee can be freely converted in India or not. Whether do we provide free convertibility of rupee or not. Isme bhi we have two concepts. Convertibility on current account, convertibility with respect to capital account. We will talk about this in little deep when we cover the external sector. So with respect to current account, we are freely allowed to convert our rupee as much as we want to. But with respect to capital account convertibility, we are not allowed to convert our rupee freely. And which committee, when we talk about capital account, तो क्या आना चाहिए दिमाग में? SS Tarapur committee is the one which is related to convertibility on the capital account. Another important committee which I missed telling you is the PJ Nayak committee. That is related to the formation of Bank Board Bureau. Note kar lo, make a note of these two committees. This is very important. You should know this. If not used in prelims, kahin na kahin, if any question comes in mains, you should know, your answer should talk about or have a reference of these two committee. If there is a question talking about the capital account convertibility, your answer should have a reference to SS Tarapur committee. Make a note of it. If not now, later during the mains, your answer should be supplemented with these of the two committees. Can we move ahead? Can we move ahead? Chalo. Now again a very easy question. Marginal standing facility क्या है? What is net demand and time liabilities? This is so easy. With which of the following it is referred to or used in reference to? We know that it is related to banking operations. What is marginal standing facility? It is a facility to borrow funds from RBI, on a rate higher than repo rate, which is repo rate plus 1% is marginal standing facility, right? What are the other avenues for the bank to borrow funds from RBI is repo rate and other one is bank rate. Bank rate is for the long-term purpose, maximum days is 28. Overnight, for the overnight liquidity, what the commercial banks resort to is the repo rate. Are we clear with this? Now let us move on to the last one. Which of the following is the purpose of statutory reserve requirement? Statutory reserve requirements are the ratios that the banks have to maintain with themselves. There was a question with respect to these two statements. ये तो पता है नहीं होगा. This also is wrong. There was a question, lot of confusion was there amongst the student with respect to these two statements, to enable the central bank to control the amount of advances and to make the people's deposit with the bank safe and liquid. So this is taken care by capital adequacy ratio. Only this statement is right, because what purpose does capital adequacy ratio serve is it provides liquidity and safety to the deposits that the people have made with the bank. Very good, Avinav. Very good that you are coping up with the subject so beautifully. I am very, very much happy for you. Ayush, very good for your prompt response. Good to see that you are clear with the concepts. You know how to approach the questions. Very good. Chalo. Now let us quickly start with public finance and fiscal policy. Now when we talk about the fiscal policy, there is one major component that you need to know with respect to fiscal policy, which is the budget of the government. Budget is what? Why do we have to make a budget? I keep on telling and explaining in a way that, let's suppose you have a limited pocket money right now, okay? So I usually give an example of Valentine's week, where you have limited pocket money, but you have to spend, or you have to celebrate all those 7 days, starting from the rose day, there's chocolate day, there is teddy day, and then there's the gala night, which is the 14th of February. You want to take out your beloved ones for a date, right? But you have limited money in your hand. So in order to maximize the usage of money, what you do is you start planning that 100 rupees is what you will allocate for celebration of chocolate day, 20 rupees for a rose day, 300 rupees for say buying a teddy or a soft toy, and rest is what you would do. You would spare for going out for a dinner or a date on 14th of Feb. Now what you are doing is, because you have limited money, what is the genesis of budget? That there is limited availability of resource. Bhai, agar paisa bahut sara hota, if the resources are unlimited, you would have never required to make a budget. Why do you need to make a budget in itself? Is because you have limited resources, right, Netra? That if you remember in the class, I quoted this example that was just after the February we started the class, right? So because we have limited resources and our wants are unlimited, that we have to want to celebrate all the 7 days, we have to rationalize or plan our expenditure. Sometimes we we resort taking loans also. But why does this all the problem erupt? Is because of the limited availability of money we have in our hand. And so is the case of the government. It has limited sources of revenues, it has limited availability of funds with itself, whereas the avenues for spending the money, the expenditure, the areas where it has to spend are unlimited. It has to provide salaries also, it has to provide loans to the state government, it has to provide subsidies, it has to provide farm loan waivers. There are so many avenues, whereas the sources of revenue for the government is very limited, and that is where the government has to prepare the budget, which is nowhere mentioned in our constitution. The word which is given in the constitution is the annual financial statement. You have to be very clear with that word budget is nowhere mentioned in our constitution of India. The word which is used for budget is annual financial statement. And who's gonna tell me the article which is there used for annual financial statement? Now broadly categorizing budget into two parts. So budget can be broadly divided into revenue budget and the capital budget. Capital budget has two parts. One is the Receipts, the other is expenditure. Receipts is what is inflow. Inflow. Expenditure is what is outflow. So any transaction, very good Ayush, Article 112. So any transaction undertaken by the government that changes its asset and liability position. Any transaction of the government that changes its asset and liability position of the government comes under what? It comes under capital budget. Rest all the transaction goes under the revenue budget, which also has its two subparts, which is receipts and there is expenditure. Again, I would say any transaction which alters the asset and liability position of the government comes under the capital budget. For example, the government has taken a loan. So there is a balance sheet which is maintained by the government. So in case of capital receipts, when the government is taking loan matlab zimmedari, the government has the responsibility to return it back. So it will get added where, since it is a receipt, but which kind of receipt? It is a debt creating receipt. It is creating responsibility on the government. So here the loan is getting added. So that means if it is altering, if any transaction is altering the asset and liability position of the government, where it will be counted as, where will be it accounted for? Under the capital budget. Government is creating or spending money to create dam. Now what is dam for the government? Dams, roads, wells, what is all? It is all asset for the government. If the money is being spent to create an asset, that means a transaction is conducted which is again altering the position of asset and liability. यहाँ पे क्या आ जाएगा? The government created or owns dams, roads, bridges. But if the government is taking out the money, if the government is taking out the money for giving these salaries, is it changing the asset and liability position of the government? No, it is not changing the asset liability of the position of the government. So where will it accounted for? It will be accounted for under the revenue expenditure. So any expenditure done or incurred by the government to maintain its day-to-day functioning is accounted under the revenue expenditure. And the revenue receipts are what? Can be further divided into tax and non-tax. So this is the broader bifurcation of how we approach the budget of the government. There are questions talking about what transactions will come under the revenue budget of the government, what transactions will form the part of the capital budget of the government. Then next is whenever the total expenditure matlab total of revenue expenditure plus, I will change the color of the pen, total of revenue expenditure plus the total of capital expenditure exceeds the total of capital receipts and total of revenue receipts, is what is fiscal deficit. So there are types of deficits. Deficits is what? Fiscal deficit, where total expenditure minus total receipts minus borrowings is what your fiscal deficit is. Then is revenue deficit. Revenue deficit is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts is your revenue deficit. Next is what you have is effective revenue deficit, and you have a concept of primary deficit also. So all these are concepts related to public policy and finance with which you have to brace yourself. Mostly the question from public finance and fiscal policy में कैसे होते हैं? Most of the questions are around cause and effect relationship. Cause, what is the cause of a particular thing, or what are the effects of a particular action taken by the government? Most of the questions revolve around the cause and effect. Means most of the questions from this part of the syllabus are the conceptual one, are the one which are checking your applied knowledge. Clear? So now let us start with the questions. Let us take up the first question, which is there. Which one of the following affects the creation of black money in India has been the cause of worry to the government of India? Which one of the following affects what is black money? Black money is the one on which the tax is not paid. Tax not paid. So if I am earning salary, okay, if I am being employed somewhere and I am not returning or I am not filing the tax return, I am not paying tax to the government, so the entire money which I earn is what is black money. And what is the implication of the black money? पढ़ो इसको और बताओ मुझे. What is the implication of black money? Because the tax which I pay on my salary, the tax which I pay on my income is a source of revenue for the government. And if I'm not paying the tax to the government, it is a loss of revenue for the state exchequer. This is this revenue with which the government functions or maintain its day-to-day functions. This is the only revenue with which the government builds new infrastructure. This is the only revenue with which the government brings out new schemes and programs, right? Niranjan, for that you have to talk to the operations team as to what is the timetable for the class for next 2-3 days. That is, the next class will be held tomorrow. That will be for the economy. On the Monday and Tuesday also, the classes will be for the economy previous year questions. Okay, for rest of the timetable, you have to talk to the operations team. You could shoot a mail or you could contact them on the Telegram group. Okay, so if I'm not paying the tax, so iske liye sabse pehle what you need to know, what is black money. Black money is the one on which we do not pay tax. If there is no tax that is being paid, that means you need to know that tax is a source of revenue for the government, and if the tax is not paid, that there is loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to tax evasion. Very good evening, Vimal. You are joining the class, I think 10 minutes before we are about to wind up. But in any case, you can always watch the recorded session. There is no harm in talking about or reading about whatever questions we are left with for the discussion. Archana, I think your reply is coming very late. This question I have asked way before, maybe somewhere around 20 minutes back. Anyway, which amongst the following step is most likely to be taken at the time of economic recession? Right now, if you see currently, this question is from 2021. 2021 was the time where the 2 waves of pandemic has already struck the country. There is a slump in the economy. There is no demand for goods and services. The production processes has got hampered. That's why there is economic recession. Now, what is the step that the government is most likely to take in the case of economic recession? Do you think the government will increase its tax rate? People are shying away from buying the goods and services. Already there is loss of employment. People are not having money in their hands. If they increase the tax rate, means if they start charging your income from a higher rate, do you think you will spend? Does the government think that the people will spend if they charge the tax rate or if they increase the tax rate? No. Do you think reduction of expenditure on public projects? Now, what effects does the undertaking of the public project has on the economy is, let's suppose if a government takes any public project like construction of a road. Now, if the roads are constructed, that means raw materials are procured. Raw materials are procured means demand is increased for raw materials like cement, coal, right? There's demand of labor. Now, when there's demand of labor, that means employment is generated. Now, if employment is generated, people get wages for getting employed. Now, when they get wages for getting employed, out of the wages that they earn, they spend in the market. Now, when they spend in the market, again, the demand for goods and services gets increased. So do you think that the government will take such a step that they will stop the expenditure on public projects? Government will always undertake the public projects when they have to revive the economy, because undertaking the public projects or increasing the investment in public projects will have this ripple effect that public projects are undertaken, demand for raw material increases, demand for labor increases. When the demand for labor is increased, employment is generated. Employment generated, they get wages. Wages is spent where? In the market. That means demand for goods and services is again picked up. So they would never take this step that they will reduce their expenditure. Cut in tax rates is something which is certainly welcome, but what is it written? It increase in the interest rate. That means loans are becoming expensive. Now, if anyone in the recession wants to start up a new factory or wants to expand its existing facility, will they resort to loan? No, because the interest rates have been increased. So this is also wrong. The correct option is increase in expenditure on public projects. Are we clear? Avinav, क्यों A लगा? Answer क्यों A लगा? Is this what you have replied for the previous one? Avinav, I am particularly concerned for you. Do you think A is the right answer, or this is something which you have replied for the previous question? What about others? Let me check the chart. Okay, I think he will take time to reply. So B is the right answer. Now let's move on to the next question. Very bad, Bhavani, you have to read. I don't know what is your origin, I mean your real name. That is why again I would say, Acha, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that I was in middle, that you were not able to see the entire statement. Now I'll make sure that whenever I introduce you, all of you, to a new question, I get aside the board so that all of you can read it with ease. Now let us start with the new question. I'll keep this table aside so that I can shift it here. Okay, Bhavani, I'm so sorry for that. That is my bad. That is something which I should have taken care of. Chalo. Sorry. Question number 3. Which one of the following is likely to be the most inflationary in its effect? Which one of the following will have the most inflationary in its effect? Repayment of public debt, borrowing from the public to finance a deficit, borrowing from the banks to finance a deficit, or creation of a new money. With this, I will also like to discuss one editorial which I found it very suitable. But first, let's solve this and then I will tell you about the editorial. There was a very beautiful editorial which talked about RBI's dilemma dealing with inflation as well as the public debt management. Very good, Bhavani, very good. इंदु फिर से चेक करो आंसर. Indu, फिर से give it a thought, take your time. What is the question is asking? What is the most inflationary? Yes, Bhavani, very good. Very good, Netra. Very good, Avinav. Very good. Which is most inflationary? Though this is also inflationary. This is also inflationary. But if we have to compare, who provided Indu? If we have to compare it between B and D. Okay? So let's evaluate both of it and then we will jump to the conclusion. Okay? So it says that what could be most inflationary? So option is borrowing from the public to finance a budget deficit. So there is a deficit which has to be financed. Now if you're borrowing from the public, so the money is changing hands. Earlier it was with the public, but now the money is being taken from the hands of the public and is being used by the government. Okay? So that means earlier this was the scenario in case of the bar. Now the money is reduced and the government is having more money and the money is being dried up from here. But in the case of creation of new money, that is printing of new currency notes, public already have money in their hands and there is inflow of new money. Inflow of new money with printing of new currency. That means more of inflation is there. Earlier, there was a balance that was maintained that earlier public was having. Out of the public, the liquidity is snatched, and now the liquidity lies in the hand of the government. But with printing of new currency, already public is having currency in their hand, already they are having money in their hand, and that is being increased by the creation of new money. So if we have to compare between these two, this is likely to have more inflationary effect. Why? Because new money is being printed and injected in the country. So D is the right answer and not B. Again, so coming back to the talking about the editorial which I was talking, which I wanted to discuss with all of you. So of late I came across a very beautiful article which talked about RBI's dilemma to be as a public or to serve as a public debt manager along with taking care of the controlling the inflation. So right now RBI is shouldered with two responsibilities. ठीक है, RBI के ऊपर दो responsibilities हैं. ठीक है, so the first responsibility is of the public debt management. When I talk about or say about public debt management, it means taking care of the debt of the government, and the another one is to control the inflation. Control inflation plus ensure adequate growth is being maintained. Right? Now just listen to it very carefully. You never know means mein kahan aa jaye. In fact, it will give you more clarity with respect to functioning of RBI. So RBI has a dual role to maintain. ठीक है? Now when RBI functions under this role, that is as a public debt management, it has to ensure that whenever the government is taking loan, government loan kahan se leti hai? Government take loans from the public, that is from the open market. So RBI has to ensure that the rate at which the government gets loan, the rate at which the government gets loan is not very high. So it has to ensure that rate of interest has to be kept low. ठीक है? The rate of interest at which government takes loan. ठीक है? Now, if the rate of interest is kept low, it is having another effect, that it is adding to the inflation. And abhi situation, what is the current situation in our country? That we are undergoing inflation. There is inflation that is being witnessed in our country. RBI is also entitled with the responsibility to control the inflation. Agar inflation control karna hai, it has to increase the rate of interest. Now, if the RBI increases the rate of interest, government ka nuksan hai. The government will be at loss because it will increase the rate of interest at which the government has borrowed the loan. So right now RBI is in fix as to what RBI should do. It has to control the inflation also. In order to control the inflation, RBI has to increase the ROI, that is rate of interest. But if it increases the rate of interest, government will be in loss. So which role it should give priority to? Whether it should give priority to the role of playing as a manager to the public debt, or whether should it play or prioritize the role of controlling the inflation in the economy. For your convenience, I would really want all of you to go through this article, and that is where in the end of that article it was suggested that we need a new body which could take care of the public debt, and RBI should be relieved. RBI should be relieved of this responsibility of public debt management. If you want, I can share the link of this article on my Instagram handle. From there, I keep on sharing very good articles that could supplement your notes on my Instagram story. If you would want, I can reshare this article with you on my Instagram ID, which is, if you want, The ID is Nanki_B22. I will put up the link of this article today itself on my Instagram handle, and I would want each one of you who are preparing for this exam to save this article for your mains and to read these articles, because this would give you more clarity with respect to the role of RBI in dual roles, that is one being the public debt manager and other being the entrusted with the responsibility of controlling the inflation. I will upload the link just after the class. Do take a note of that editorial. So now moving on to the next question, which talks about, this is the last question that we'll take up for the day. It talks about along with the budget, the finance minister also places other documents before the parliament, which includes macroeconomic framework statement. The aforesaid document is presented because this is mandated by, because this, Niranjan, I'm so sorry that you do not have Instagram. You should make an Instagram account in the free time. So actually what happens is, why do people refrain from using Instagram is they just, once they start using it, they are not able to stop themselves. But I do not take Instagram at like this way, that it is kind of a distraction. Use it wisely, use it for reading good material that is available, use it, there are many tips that is being shared on Instagram as well. So use it wisely, but do use it. It provides you a change of mind, change of thought, a new way of looking at things. So that is what I would say. It's not that I'm promoting Instagram, but something which I would say is something you should not shy off. Okay, coming back to the question, but I'll try if I could share with the Telegram also, Niranjan. Along with the budget, there's another statement that the ministers have to put it on the table, and it has to be as per the provisions of fiscal responsibility and budget management. And this is an act that was introduced in 2003 with the agenda of financial prudence, with the agenda of financial prudence, so that, and the debt sustainability, and the FRBM Act. The FRBM Act, okay. The FRBM Act 2003 provides for 3 figures to be provided in the terms of GDP. First is the fiscal deficit. Another is the revenue deficit, and the last is the tax to GDP ratio. All these 3 figures has to be provided with respect to the GDP of the country, that every year, along with laying of the budget. Fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP, revenue deficit as a percentage of GDP, tax as a percentage of GDP is something which the budget has to provide for, and there are statements that has to be published along with the budget. Those are medium term fiscal policy statement. Another is macroeconomic framework statement. Next we have specifications. Of fiscal policy strategy. These are the 3 statements which the FRBM Act prescribes to be laid along the budget. And there is one provision of escape clause, and the revised figure of the budget we will discuss in the next session. So for the next session, we will start with as to what escape clauses, plus the revised target of fiscal deficit. So with this, I wind up the class for today. Hope you enjoyed the session. The editorial link, certainly I'll upload it on my Instagram along with those who are not on Instagram, I'll try if I could share it on the Telegram with the help of the operations team. And we will soon meet tomorrow, the same time, that is 2 o'clock, talking about the escape clause as well as the new target that has been set for the fiscal deficit, plus the remaining questions from this topic. And then we will be taking or talking about the questions from the external sector of the country. So winding up the session, hope you enjoyed. All the best for all of you. Keep working hard and goodbye. Thank you so much, Bhavani. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the session.